Hello and welcome to today's CSEC mathematics lesson. It's going to be about rates, taxes, salary, and bills. Let's first start by doing the solutions to the exercises we had yesterday. The first thing we need to do is figure out what the cost of the bike would be in pounds. So we will say since 1.25 USD is equal to 1 GBP, then 1 USD would be equivalent to 1 over 1.25 GBP. That means 1200 USD would be equal to 1 over 1.25 times 1200 GBP, which is equal to $960. So we translated the cost of 1200 US dollars into GBP. The next thing that we need to do is figure out how much the bike weighs in kilograms. So we know that 1 pound is equal to 0.454 kilograms. That means that 20 pounds would be equivalent to 0.454 kilograms per pound. I'm just going to put LB times 20, which works out to be 90.8 kilograms. Let's do the other question. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is we need to convert that 2-pound bag into grams. We know that 1 pound is equal to 453.59 grams. Therefore, 2 pounds would be equivalent to 2 times 453.59 grams, which is equal to 907.18 grams. Our recipe calls for 500 grams. Therefore, it means that our 1 pound bag is sufficient for us to be able to meet the requirements of the recipe. So hence, we should buy 1 2-pound bag, and I should put this here as 1 2LB bag, which costs $3.50, and we will meet the requirements of the recipe. Let's do the third one. The first thing we realize from this question is that 25 CAD would be equal to 1 liter. From there, we just need to convert this to Australian dollars, and we need to convert this to gallons. So let's first work at this 25 CAD. We know that 0.95 CAD is equal to 1 AUD. Now, that means that 1 CAD would be equal to 1 over 0.95 AUD. Hence, 25 CAD would be equivalent to 1 over 0.95 times 25 AUD. And that is equal to 26.32 AUD. So let me just change this here now. All right? So this now becomes 26.32 AUD will get me 1 liter. Next, we need to convert that liters to gallons. So we know that 3.785 liters gives me 1 gallon. That means that 1 liter is equal to 1 over 3.785 gallons. 0.264 gallons. Our equivalence now becomes something like this. It is 26, and I'll just copy and paste this. So now I'm just going to replace on the end here, from the liter, I'm going to replace it with the gallon, which is 0.264 gallons. Now I have an equivalence, now I have a cost. So it costs $26.32 for 0.264 gallons of heat. From there, we just need to find out how much 3 gallons would cost. So let's work with that. So 0.264 gallons is equal to 26.32. 1 gallon will cost 26.32 divided by 0.264. then that means 3 gallons will cost 26.32 divided by 0.264 times 3, which gives me, so it's going to cost me 299.09 Australian dollars to get 3 gallons of paint. Now let's start with the lecture for today. Today we will learn how to solve problems involving rates and taxes, utilities, invoices and shopping bills, salaries and wages, and insurance and investments. These objectives are very useful in everyday life, so I hope it benefits you. Let's begin with rates and taxes. A rate is essentially a ratio comparing two different units, like kilometers per hour, or something more familiar, like the amount of money each unit costs. Taxes are mandatory charges levied by governments to fund public services and infrastructure. There are different types of taxes, which include income tax on earnings, property tax on lands or buildings that you own, VAT on the purchase of goods and services, and national insurance contributions, which funds benefits like pension and sickness payments. These taxes are essential for maintaining public infrastructure and social services. Let's try this example. A car travels at 180 kilometers in 4 hours. What is its average speed in kilometers per hour? I'll solve these on the paper. All right, so this here would be example 1. And the solution is as follows. We need to figure out the average speed. So we know that average speed is equal to total distance divided by total time. Total distance in this example is 180 kilometers. And the time was 4 hours. Which means that the answer is 45 kilometers per hour. Let's try another example. An employee earns a monthly gross salary of $7,000. The income tax is 25% on income above the personal allowance of $6,000 per month. Additionally, there is a national insurance contribution of 3% on the gross salary. Let's calculate the total tax deductions and the employee's net salary. All right, let's work on the solution for number 2. Now, the first thing you need to do is we need to figure out what is our taxable income. The taxable income would be equal to your salary minus your allowance. Yes, they're basically telling you what you're allowed to have untaxed. So that is $7,000 minus your $6,000. And that means you have to get taxed on this extra $1,000 that you are making above their allowance. Now that you know the taxable income, we apply the tax on that of 25%. So the tax amount would be equal to 25% of $1,000, which I can work on my calculator. So that is the amount of tax we have to pay. Now we have to consider the NIS contribution. The NIS contribution is 3% on the gross salary. Our gross salary is $7,000. So our NIS contribution is 3% of $7,000. So that is $210. Now the total tax is 250 plus 210, and that means we have to pay $460 in tax. That means our net salary is $7,000 minus that tax of 460. And that is the amount of money you're allowed to keep after you earn $7,000. Next, we'll talk about utilities. Utilities are essential services provided to households and businesses like electricity and water. They are usually billed based on how much you use. Here's an example of a utilities problem. A household uses 600 units of electricity in a month. The electricity rate is 12 cents per unit, plus a fixed monthly service of $15. Calculate the total electricity bill for the month. Okay, so we have to first figure out how much we're going to be charged for the electricity that we use. Cost of electricity used would be equal to the rate, and this here is the cost per unit, times total units. So that is equal to 12 cents a unit times 600 units. And this here would be equivalent to $72. Now, this unit in here would usually be written in something like this: kilowatt hour. All right, when you look on your bill, this is what you would see. This is the cost of electricity used and the total bill. The bill amount would be that $72 adding to that $15, which works out to be $87. Let's talk about what a tiered billing system is. In this system, the cost per unit changes based on the amount used. Typically, the first few units are charged at a lower rate, while additional units are charged at higher rates. This encourages conservation and helps manage the demand for finite resources such as water. Sometimes you may find it in utilities such as electricity and gas as well. Let's solve an example where the bill is tiered into how much units you use. So a household uses 300 cubic units of water, cubic meters of water in a month. The water rates are as follows: 100 cubic meters, 5 cents per cubic meter. The next 100 cubic meters, 10 cents per cubic meter. And anything above 200 cubic meters, you pay 15 cents per cubic meter. You're required to calculate the total water bill for the month if there's also a fixed charge of $20. So example number 4, we know that we have a total of 300 total water consumed, and that is 300 cubic, you know what, let me just put the units, 300 cubic meters. We know on the first 100 cubic meters you're charged 5 cents. So on the first 100 cubic meters, 100 times 5 cents, which results in $5 for the cost of that water, that first 100 cubic meters. On the second 100 cubic meters, we're going to take 100 and times it by that second tier of 10 cents. And that is going to be $10. Let's go to the final one now. Anything above 200. So on the final 100 cubic meters, we're going to be charged 15 cents. So that's 100 times 15. And we get $15. So the total on bill would be equal to that $15 plus the $10 plus the $5 and plus the service fee of $20. That total works out to be $50. So 15, 10 and 5, 15, 15 and 15 is 30, 30 and 20 is 50. All right, so $50 on that bill amount. Now, these rates are very low, and usually in Trinidad, I know we have this for electricity bills, and they tend to be in a different range. You can check your electricity bill for one of these, and you would see what I mean by a tiered billing system. Now, this tiered billing system, such as in the tiered billing for water, is beneficial because it encourages conservation by making high consumption more costly. It reflects the increased costs associated with supplying large amounts of water, such as storage and treatment. Now, this system also ensures fair pricing, as the low volume users enjoy lower rates, while those who consume more pay higher fees. Let's talk about invoices and shopping bills. Invoices and shopping bills itemize the products or services you have purchased, including prices, taxes, and any discounts, helping you to keep track of your spending. Here's an example. A customer purchases 4 notebooks at $2.50 each, 3 pens at $1.20 each, and 2 calculators at $15 each. Sales tax is 10%. And then we're required to calculate the total amount due. All right, let's solve example 5. So the first thing we want to do is calculate our bill. We're going to say 4 notebooks, and it costs $2.50 each. So that means it will cost $2.50 times 4, which works out to be $10. You know what? Let me write this differently. Which works out to be $0.00.01. Then we have 3 pens, which will cost me $1.20 each, $1.20 each, times 3, and this would be equal to 60 and then 3. Then we have 2 calculators, and that will cost me $15 times 2, which is $30. So subtotal would be equivalent to $43.60. Our tax is 10% of $43.60, which is, then the total would be equivalent to $6,974, $47.96. Next, let's talk about salaries and wages. Salaries and wages are forms of compensation. A salary is a fixed amount paid regularly regardless of hours worked, while a wage is based on the number of hours or days worked. Here's an example. An employee earns $400 per week for 40 hours of work. Overtime is paid at double the regular hourly rate. If the employee works 50 hours in a week, calculate their total wage for that week. Okay, so let's first identify their basic wage. Their basic wage is equal to $400. We get this $400 by taking their hourly rate and multiplying it by that 40 hours for a basic week. Next, let's get the overtime worked. The overtime worked would be that 50 hours that they work for that week minus the 40 hours. That means they worked 10 hours overtime that week. Next, what we have to do is figure out how much they are paid for that overtime. Overtime is double their regular hourly rate. Okay, so we already know that the basic wage is the hourly rate times 40 hours. So hourly rate is equal to your basic wage all over 40 hours. Basic wage is going to be equivalent to 400 divided by 40 hours, and that means they work for $10 per hour. Now that we know their regular hourly rate, then overtime rate would be equal to 2 times that $10 per hour, which is $20 per hour. Their overtime wage would be equal to $20 per hour multiplied by the overtime hours that they work, which was 10 hours. This results in an additional $200 earned. Therefore, that means their total wage would be equal to that $400 of basic wage plus that $200 of overtime wage, and they will get a total of $600 for their wage. Now let's talk about insurance and investments. Now, insurance provides financial protection against potential future losses, while investments are assets purchased with the expectation that they will generate income or appreciate in value. Let's look at an example. A person invests $10,000 in a fixed deposit account offering 5% annual interest. Calculate the total amount after 3 years. Too bad this isn't a compound interest. It would have been a very nice earning. Anyway, let's move on. So we'll solve this example now. So we're looking at a simple interest. So the interest would be equivalent to your principal, which is in this case 10,000, times your rate, which in this case is 5% every year, by a time, which is 3 years, divided by 100. 2 zeros, 2 zeros. 5 by 3 is 15, 15 with 2 zeros. That is an interest of 1,500. All right, so the total amount that they will get after 3 years, the total after 3 years is equal to that 10,000 plus that 1,500. And that would be equal to $11,500. Now that will be the end of the lesson. Here are some exercise problems you can try, and I will solve these on another day. This is exercise 1, this is exercise 2, this is exercise 3, and that's it. Thank you for joining for today's lesson. I hope these examples helped you understand how to apply basic arithmetic to financial concepts. And in the next session, we will do the solutions to the end of section exercise sheet in the Google Classroom.